I have been seeing many people that arrive to that point of burnout, and that pushed them to make this transformation.
I had the infamous evening spent in the emergency room because I was having heart palpitations, thinking that I was having a heart attack. I had the universe saying, okay, we've tried with the subtle hints. Now we're just going to slap you around the face and make sure you listen. He was a gentleman and a gentle man. During the funeral, what I realised is that he hadn't, quote unquote, just died from a heart attack. He'd actually died by suicide. And then on the Monday morning, he got up and he went to the Red Bridge in Luxembourg and he jumped. You don't need to wait until X, Y, Z happens to be happy. You have the power to be happy and at peace right now.
Wise words from my guest today. She is Joanna Denton, a life coach who has transformed her life by redefining success and prioritizing her own needs and dreams. She shares how crucial it is to listen to the signals and wake-up call indicating the need for change. Through her journey, Joanna learned to navigate life chaos and expand her map of reality, challenging limiting beliefs that held her back. Her mission is to help us choose ourselves and our health and happiness before life falls apart. She reminds us to prioritize our well-being and to embrace a life that truly reflects our dreams and aspirations. So please grab a cup of coffee or tea and get inspired to redefine success and create a life that feels as incredible as it sounds. Welcome to the Brilliantly Branded Podcast.
Welcome one more time to the Brilliantly Branded Podcast. I'm so happy that I am having another brilliant guest today. She is a life coach. She has an amazing background. She is a two-time TED speaker, author. She is a podcaster as well, a fellow podcaster. And actually, she is a former director in a Big Four company. Her expertise actually is helping individuals to navigate the life's changes and redefine success. Sometimes you are in a chaos and you have a life chaos. So she is giving a hand with that and helping and empowering. So I have today Joanna Denton. Welcome, Joanna, to the Brilliantly Branded Podcast. And as I said always after this warm welcome, please, could you introduce yourself?
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me on the show. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. So my name is Joanna Denton. I am, as you mentioned, I'm a life coach working with business leaders and entrepreneurs. And in a previous incarnation, I was very different. In a previous incarnation, I was a tax geek. I studied law, got a couple of law degrees, qualified in taxes in 2 different jurisdictions. And then I had a 16-year career specializing in VAT and working my way up to the level of director, as you say, in Big Four companies. Yes. So along the way, I've spoken on stages all around the world. I've done lots of different things. And then back in 2014, I had this wake-up call. I had my second burnout in 5 years. I realize there's more to life than tax. And I know that's a controversial statement. There will be people out there going, oh my gosh, how could there be more to life than tax? And anyway, I decided to change my life because I realized if I didn't, I would be in trouble, in serious trouble. So I did, and I became a coach, and I've been coaching ever since.
Thank you for sharing that, because doing transformation in life, coming actually from the background that you are coming, working with a big companies and getting to that point that really make you realize that you need to make change, you need to make a transformation. So actually, how was, if you want to share with us, what was the details? Because, and I am asking for that because I have been seeing many people that arrive to that point of burnout, and that pushed them to make this transformation. So if you can share with us how your experience was related with that and when you did that change or pivot in your mind.
It's really interesting. I think when I look back, there were hints and signs that the universe was sending me. For example, I started having these OCD behaviors. I had checklists to leave the apartment. When I was leaving the office, this is going to sound really loopy, I used to take videos of the floor. I would get up from, look at the look of shock on your face. No, literally, I would get up from my desk. It would be whatever time, 11, 12 o'clock at night. And I would video the floor from my desk all the way out of my office, along the corridor, into the lift, down the stairs, to my car, because I was so worried about dropping something. So I was all of these kind of anxiety things. I had the infamous evening spent in the emergency room because I was having heart palpitations, thinking that I was having a heart attack. And all along the way, I'm going, but this is normal. This is what happens when you're working long hours. And if I want to succeed in corporate, this is normal. And then it was only, as I say, it was back in March of 2014. That was the wake up call. That was the kind of the universe saying, okay, we've tried with the subtle hints. Now we're just going to slap you around the face and make sure you listen. And what it was that I was in the middle of my second burnout. I was super glued to the sofa, didn't want to wash, didn't want to eat, didn't want to go outside. But most importantly, I didn't want to tell anyone because I thought that means I'm weak. If I ask for help, that means I'm weak. And so I didn't. And my parents knew what was happening, but my friends not so much. And then I got an email to say that one of my colleagues from a not-for-profit that I was working in had died suddenly at the age of 67. And this guy, he's a lovely guy. He was a gentleman and a gentle man. And I thought, I'm going to go to this funeral, even if I haven't been out of the apartment in days and weeks. And so I go to the funeral, and during the funeral, what I realized is that he hadn't, quote unquote, just died from a heart attack. He'd actually died by suicide. And he'd spent the weekend with his friends. They'd gone to the movies, they'd gone to the jazz aperitif, down in the Abbey. And then on the Monday morning, he got up and he went to the Red Bridge in Luxembourg and he jumped. And what was really shocking for me was the words of his friends, because his friends were saying, we'd have been there. We were with him 48 hours before. He said nothing. And there's the kind of sadness and shock for them. And this for me was a mirror. And I came out of the memorial home and I sat in the car and the tears started coming, because what I realized was the mirror was the fact that I had never had suicidal thoughts, but the thoughts I'd had were, I can't tell anybody. I am on my own doing this. And I had this vision of what my life could be like. And I had this realization, Joe, if you don't change your life, you'll be dead by 45. From a heart attack, from a stroke, from whatever it was. And I'm like, Joe, you need to do something and you need to do it now. And I picked up the phone and I rang my friend, and she pretty much dropped everything. Her son was in the creche. She said, Joe, you come round here, we'll wait until he's finished creche. And then we picked him up and she came back to my apartment so I didn't have to be on my own. And then from there I talked to other people and they fed me. That was one of the first things. Fed me.
Oh my goodness.
I gave me food. They took me to hot yoga. Have you ever been to hot yoga? People sweaty Betties in hot yoga, sweat dripping down their backs, and me thinking, what's going on here? But my friends brought me back, and I brought myself back from this through with help from my friends, with help from a good therapist. I decided to leave tax. I started coaching first around public speaking within the organization, and then I left and did my own business. But that was it. That was the kind of, it's one of those things, and I work a lot with my clients around this in terms of making a change. For me, until that point of Peter's funeral, I thought it made sense for me to work these hours. I thought it made sense that my body was screaming at me and I was making no adjustment. And then finally something else came and it no longer made sense to me, and something had to change. So yeah.
Wow, Joe. I mean, this is a really eye-opening experience in the sense that even with the signals, we are not paying attention and we are just deciding to isolate ourselves, don't ask for help, and really don't meet our main needs met to other people, even the people that can really give us a hand. And having that experience, of course, that needs to be super shocking from the point of view you already lost a friend and lost a friend that was normal in the sense that he was sharing with other people
Mm,
socially. Actually, he was not isolated, if I understood well. So actually how we as an individuals can have the opportunity to read and pay attention to those signals that the universe
mm,
sent to us
completely.
is something that, well, for me, it has been very difficult in the sense that I can see sometimes people that are screaming for help but don't say anything. So
Mm,
this is connecting actually with what you are doing, that you are
absolutely.
doing and what you decide to start doing in life. And after all this story that you share with us, thank you, because this is a very personal story,
Mm,
but it's beautiful that you connected with what you are doing today. And
mm.
actually, I will love you to tell us what specifically are you working right now based on that experience, because making those calls and knowing what is happening to you is super important for people to
Mm.
realize that working extra hours and doing all those things, how to manage that. And well, I'm doing a lot of questions at the same time, but
Yeah.
only one. Only one is, tell us a little bit what you are doing right now.
So, what am I doing right now? Well, what I have realized over the last 10 years since that is that I'm essentially on a mission. And my mission is that no other person ever waits until their life is falling apart before they choose themselves and their own health and happiness. And so, how I'm doing that is I call myself the ridiculous coach. And I talk about creating a ridiculous life. And a ridiculous life for me is a life so incredible that to even aspire to it feels ridiculous. Now, what do I mean by that? This is not about the big car, the big house, the big boat. This is not about waiting until XYZ happens so I can be happy. This is about saying, right here, right now, I have the right to be happy. I have the capacity to be happy and I don't need to wait for anything else. Now, why does that seem ridiculous? Well, it might seem ridiculous because I talk about the shoulda, woulda, couldas. So, for example, somebody might think that's ridiculous because they might think to themselves, I really want to say no to this person when they ask me to do this, but that's ridiculous because I have to keep everybody else happy. I'm the only one that can do it, so I'm going to say yes. Someone might think that a life is ridiculous because they have grown up in an environment that maybe there wasn't a lot of money and times were tight. And so they were taught that it would be greedy to ask for what they want, it would be unreasonable to ask for what they want. And so while that made sense when they were 5, 6, 8, 9 years old, now that they're 45 and they're earning their own money and they've learned how to be sensible with money, they still have this belief in the back of their head. And so they still know what they would love to have in their life, but they think it's unreasonable to ask for it. A classic example can be when we wake up in the morning and we're feeling really tired and we're starting to get the cold. Listen, this is what I used to do. I would wake up in the morning, I would feel like crap. I would feel really ill. I could tell that there was a flu coming on, and I felt really, really miserable. And I would go to my diary, and I would look at my diary, and I'd say, if I move this, this, and this, maybe next Thursday at 3:30, I'll have time to be ill.
Yes. Yes, I have been there in the sense of sometimes it's difficult to deal with the one day, these days that you are having not in my day by day life, but sometimes you're having these bad days and you say, well, I'm going to cancel everything. And then you say, no, I'm going to please everyone.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to don't listen in what I need, what I should be recover, all these kind of things. So how did you really change that? Or is it not that easy?
No, it's not. It's not easy at all. And don't get me wrong, I'm not inviting everyone to become these selfish, self-centered, narcissistic so-and-sos. This is not what we're talking about. There are times we have deadlines, we have things that we need to do, we have obligations that we need to get through it. But what I'm talking about is the case where it's incessantly pushing through because we're trying to do that. Now, what did it take for me to change that? Well, I had a wake-up call. I had this kind of, if I don't change things, this is going to get really, really messy. And so what has helped me is learning about things like cognitive behavior therapy, dialectic behavior therapy, different things there, which are essentially about recognizing the thought patterns that are coming up and recognizing that, if you like, we create our own experiences based on the meaning that we put to them. So what does this mean? Well, if you think about it, when we're very small, we have to work out how to navigate through life. So we try experiments, we do things, and we create a little map for ourselves. So we've got a little map, a piece of paper, and that's our map. And we do that through experimentation, like we put our hand on the stove, it burns, ow, I'm not going to do that again. But also things like maybe we do well at school and our parents praise us because we've done well at school. So we're like, okay, if I want praise from my parents, I need to do well at school. I need to work hard. Or maybe we throw a tantrum and we make a big fuss and then we get lots of attention. Okay, that's how we get attention. So we create this map about what the rules are in life, and we kind of carry that through. Now, when we carry that through, and we have this map in our pocket, we think this is the reality of life. So we apply this map as we go through, and we do what makes sense based on that map.
Yeah.
The only way to then change that behavior is to expand that map into something bigger and to expand how we understand how the world works. And as we can expand that, then different things start to make sense. So, for example, I started to understand that I had this belief system about I need to keep everyone happy. I need to do the hard work. If I'm not working hard, then I'm being unprofessional. I'm not dedicated. I had to start to understand I had that belief system, and then look to challenge it and say, well, is this true? Is this really true? What if it wasn't true? What if I could do it something different? And I started to test it and try it differently and see what happened, and then realize that, life was different than that. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. And part of the things that I want to ask you is when you have that people that comes to you to do this process, part of the things that make us realize that is happening, probably you use something specific, something that you always have your stamp. I mean, the ridiculous coach have a stamp that is making with those individuals something that make them realize that what is this. Well, I'm not asking for your secret sauce, so I'm nothing similar to that. But my point is how, because this is very difficult. I mean, we already know that we need to leave the power of now and all these kind of things, but it's very easy to get into the loop of really getting lost. So how do you manage that with the coaches that you have?
How do I manage what specifically?
Make them realizing that all
there's
those...
something has to change.
Yes.
It's a very interesting question, because on the one hand, it's not for me to say someone has to change their life. It's not for me to tell you, Maria, how to live your life. What often happens is my client has had some kind of wake up call. For example, one of the people that I spoke to in this context, she was just going through life and she was pushing herself, and she knew that this was making her tired, depleted, ill. But it was only when she realized that she was too tired to remember the recipe to make spaghetti bolognese for her kids that she's like, oh, wait, okay, this is not
Something
right.
happening. Yeah.
This is not right. I had another friend actually who, for months on end, years on end, would be working these ridiculous hours, and she just wasn't. It wasn't computing with her that this was a bad thing. And then a friend of hers was in the police and was in a work related incident and died. And then suddenly she's like, oh, wait a minute, life's too short. So it can be a kind of, or someone else who had been, working for nearly 20 years for the same organization and dedicating their life to it and sacrificing their health and their holidays and everything, and was up for this big promotion and then didn't get the promotion and was told, no, we don't think you're the right one for it. And then suddenly it was like, say what now? I've just spent all of this time working towards this, and so it can be things like that, it can be. And so they come to me because they know something has to change, but they don't necessarily know what or how, or even if it's possible. Maybe they've gone and read a bunch of books and they've tried to implement it, but after 3 days, then that does get, or whatever it is. But they very often it's like something's happened and they've just had this realization. Because I think this is the point. Again, it goes back to what I was saying about what makes sense. The difference between a map that's this big and a map that's that big can be a single realization, a single kind of, say what now? Seriously? But until that moment, that was all they got.
Yeah. Yeah. So finding that balance actually
Mm.
probably is the most challenging things in life, because I think we all have been just with one map, as you will explain that to us, but actually make that bigger and having a different overview is challenging. So I'm sure that part of the listeners now of this episode are thinking, well, I am in that moment in life. I'm feeling like there is so many signals around, but how can I find that balance? Well, you will be advising to them right now.
Balance is such an interesting word, isn't it?
It
Because
is.
because if, for example, I'm going to ask you, Maria, what does balance mean to you?
Yeah, well, I am not balancing. I am juggling. Yes. Let's start by that.
Well, I mean, if you were to imagine that, say you had a magic wand that you could wave, and from one day to the next, you wake up in the morning and there's balance in your life, and
Yeah.
and you kind of look around, you think, okay, this is it. This is really it. How would you know that you had balance? What would you see? What would you feel? What would you think?
In fact, it's very difficult because finding that balance include a lot of control and a lot of controlling processes as well. So I consider that finding that balance is actually in the moment that you are feeling when you let go, that you are in peace with yourself. For me, this is balance. For me, this is balance, but I don't know. I mean, probably balance is very different for everybody, but I don't know. This is my concept.
And that's exactly the point, because how you might define balance might be very different to how somebody else defines balance. So if you like, that's the first step. What do you want by the way of balance? And it's very interesting that you talk about this idea of peace and this idea of just letting go and acceptance. And this is a little bit about what I mean in this idea of it's not waiting for X, Y, Z to happen. It's like, how can you in this moment already have that sense of peace? How can you already just let go. And for the listeners, I've got my hands up, kind of clenched in a fist, and just let go.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So for me, that's the first step. It's about understanding what that actually represents, what balance or whatever else represents. What does peace represent? How would you know that you're at peace? And getting really clear on what that is, and getting really clear on what that brings you that you don't have right now, what that sense of peace would bring you. And when you can get really clear on where you want to go and what you want to get, and you get really clear on where you are right now, that tension is going to be a tension pulling you towards what you want, pulling you towards that. And that's where your innate wisdom comes through. That when you quiet the noise, I mean, if I said to you, if you got really honest with yourself and you really focused on that peace that you want to get and where you are now, I would imagine that your own wisdom would tell you what's the first next step.
I love that. Your own wisdom. So listening to
Own
your
wisdom. Own wisdom, absolutely.
Yeah, that is clear. That is clear because, I think that some of us are, let's say, go deeper into ourselves to know what exactly is happening to us. And even though that, because I have been spending many years working on myself and trying to listen into the things, to have this peace of mind, let's say. But at the same time, I have had the opportunity to really be convinced that if I don't let go things, I will not going forward. And
Absolutely.
that is the point. And actually part of redefining that success, because I think that part of actually you and I have this conversation when I was saying to you, well, I have been to rebuild myself many times. Well, you told me, no, you haven't had to rebuild. You are already the person that you are. You just have been redefining. So
Absolutely.
just
Absolutely.
yeah.
I think that we can lose sight of that. We can lose sight of the fact that we have this innate wisdom. And I think that can happen because society, the internet, Instagram, advertising is all telling us that we need some kind of expert guru to tell us how to live our life. Even the fact of saying, well, Joe, how can I get balance? It's like, who am I to tell you, Maria, how to live your life? And I think that's the point. So my role, if you like, within this is about helping you quiet the noise so that the wisdom can come through and create the environment and the conditions for you to have those insights. Now, yes, of course, I can give you tools and I can give you things to think about and I can ask you questions to expand that understanding. And ultimately, I mean, don't get me wrong. If you want to become a brain surgeon, it's probably going to be helpful that you go and learn about medicine.
Correct.
There's going to be some tools around that. I mean, around branding, there are some tools and tricks that you can do to become a good brander. But if it's about living as Maria, who the hell am I to come along and tell you how to do that? But one of the things that I've realized over the last number of years was that I was waiting for someone to come along and tell me how to live my life. I was waiting for someone to come along and say, this is how you do it. I was waiting for this kind of roadmap of step by step and milestone. I'm a consultant at the basis. That's people used to pay me good money to help them implement plans around VAT. So I was waiting for that. But what I've come to learn over these last 10 years is that's, if you wait until the roadmap's there, you'll never move anywhere. It's one of those things. It's not in setting up a roadmap that you'll be able to start taking action. It's about in taking action right now that the roadmap will reveal itself. And that's the thing that I do with my clients.
This is very wise. Joanna. And actually, part of the things you have been building many different tools, for example, books. You are an author. And I will love, this conversation have been beautiful because I think it's an eye opener for all those people that are now in this moment wondering, okay, yeah, I probably just me knows how to find the balance, but what are the tools and what are the help that are available outside that I can count with to really to have this peace of mind. So where the people can find you first, second, the name of your book, because I think that is an amazing tool for people to start reading and knowing and learning and having the tools to really get that. That would be lovely if you can share this with us.
I'm just looking in my bookcase to see if I can find my book, and I'm thinking, I can't even find my book. Absolutely. Okay, so this is my book. It is called A Different Truth, Rejecting the Truths That Are Killing Your Career and Learn to Make Choices That Are Better for You. So this is a little bit about, so this book is about saying, we have these stories that we tell ourselves that become so ingrained, it becomes the truth. Like, it should be enough that I've done a good job. I don't need to tell anyone. Or I need to put everyone else first, or whatever that is. And this is a book about saying, well, what if there was a different truth? And what if there was a different story that was more like real life? And how do you step into that? So that's what this book is about. And it's kind of full of different tools to do that, very specifically. So, for example, even one of the big things let me give you a concrete example. Boundaries. People talk a lot about boundaries. Oh, you just need to put boundaries in place. Yeah. Fabulous. But what the heck does that mean? And how do I do it? What is even a boundary? I have a client who talks about this in a really nice way. She talks about it being like a jacket that she puts on. Wow. That kind of quote unquote protects her. It's not about pushing people away, but it's just about saying, this is what's okay and this is what's not okay. And I think what I've come to realize working on myself and with clients is we have signed up to so many silent contracts with ourselves that we don't even know that we've done them.
Wow, that is so true.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's like, it feels as though I signed a silent contract at some point that I had to keep everybody else happy.
Yeah.
And that was, the way you have, these are your obligations, these are their obligations. My obligations, keep everyone else happy. Their obligations, don't care at all about what Joe thinks. I'm just going to impose what I want. And those sort of things. And it's like, wait a minute, is that reasonable? That might have worked at one point, what works today? So around boundaries within the book, I talk about, what's okay, what's not okay. And I also talk about and ask, so this is done in a way that kind of provides you with journaling prompts and that sort of thing. So very often what can come up is the stories we tell ourselves. If we say no, and if we put boundaries in place, what's going to happen? So yes. I don't know about you, Maria, but for example, are there times when it's easier for you to put boundaries in place in particular situations with particular people as compared to other people or other situations? Do you find that there's a difference in how easy it is to say no and place those into existence?
Well, it's not that easy, but if you actually you define the boundaries from yourself and don't let others define the boundaries for you, it's a good start point. Because then,
absolutely.
Then it's like a two-sided game, let's say, because sometimes people are setting their boundaries and you are just saying, well, this is their boundaries and I have to be adapted to that. So not always I am adaptable to the boundaries of others, let's say, and I am not so sticky to just my boundaries. I mean, flexibility for me is important. If you bring as well many different components like respect, like don't want to please everyone, and all those experiences that have been lived already, that given to you this experience of experimentation, what have been happening before when you have been doing certain things. So I think it's more in the way of an invitation of getting more tools to learn how to not just set boundaries, but thinking in many other things around that we always can't share with a professional. with a coach that help us to really navigate all those things, for me is the most important part, because sometimes we say, I can do everything alone. And sometimes somebody that have already that experience and know much more that have been studying, going deeper to many different topics, come and help us. So this is when I make a use of a coach, for example, and that have been making a big difference in my life. So
I love that. And it's again goes back to the idea that my role as a coach is to help you tap into that experience, and it's to
correct.
help you ask those questions. And also it's to help you maybe identify stories that come up around that, about what will happen if you put the boundaries in place, or what will happen if you don't. And all of those aspects are about expanding the size of that map. And that's exactly it. So in the book, for example, there'll be exercises to do, journaling prompts, little experiments. So it's all about that kind of the self-reflection, the self-awareness that leads to those insights, because the insights have to come from within. I can get up on my soapbox and talk about boundaries. Thou shalt put boundaries in place, and they
Yeah.
must be fixed and whatever else. But until such time as you or a client says, yeah, absolutely, I deserve to be able to say this is what's okay and this is what's not okay. It's perfectly okay for me to do that. I had a super conversation just the other week with my group. I run a group program called My Ridiculous Life, which is about the mindset piece of stepping into this. And we had a conversation about sovereignty. Now, what do I mean by sovereignty? I mean about being queen of your own queendom, king of your own kingdom, and making decisions that are the best for all the parts of you, rather than letting somebody else run the show. In many situations, it can be easy for us to fall onto what we call the drama triangle of being a victim of circumstances. Oh, it's everybody else's fault. Or being the rescuer. Oh, I'm going to come and fix it. But by fixing everybody else, I don't need to fix myself. Or being the persecutor of this is what's wrong with the world. And so long as we stay on that triangle, then we will play a role that is less than being a complete quote unquote grown up and sovereign over it. So we were having a conversation about falling off that triangle back into sovereignty and saying, you know what, I'm a grown up. I don't need anybody's permission to live my life. I don't need anybody's validation to say that this is the right way to do it. And what was very interesting was that what was coming up for some of the people in the group was, oh, does that mean I'm selfish? Does that mean I'm selfish if I say that this is what I want? And what I was saying is, it's like, no, because selfish would suggest that you think that what you want is more important than other people. What I'm saying is that what you want is at least as equally important as everybody else.
Well, this is difficult to understand. I think that we need time to digest that specifically. Okay. And I say that because part of the things that I know, because I am as well working in the coaching world, is the acceptance of recognizing that there is something for us first, because the selfish is there is like, well, no, this is not how that happened. But as we will know in the world, we need to get the oxygen first for us and then given to others. And there is a world full of takers, and we are givers in certain ways. So sometimes people come and take and take and take, and actually we are not taking anything because we are not thinking in ourselves enough. So it's an exercise there. Difficult.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. I mean, I read something. What was it? I read this morning on Instagram. The font of all knowledge. It was something along the lines of, you know, you can accept that there are going to be clowns out there that want to take, but the question you have to answer is, why are you still going to the circus?
Yeah.
Why are you still going to the circus? Why do you even? So in my group program, we talk about different themes and reflections and how they apply to your own life. And one of the things that we talk about is this circle of strength. The people in our circle that are there to champion and support us. And we do an exercise around kind of mapping, who are the kind of intimate connections, who are our playmates and who are our acquaintances. And within that, the intimate circle are the people. It doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. They're the ones you call when you have to hide the body.
Yeah.
Those are the people that you really trust with your innermost life. The playmates are people you spend, a lot of time with, but you might not necessarily tell them everything. And the acquaintances, that could be the barista in the local coffee shop where you go in and the coffee's on the table by the time you get there. So all of these things. And one of the learning points from this exercise is that we have a choice as to who is in our circle.
Yeah.
And we can move them in and we can move them out. There might be someone, if you and I were to do this exercise, maybe you would think of someone, your bestest friend that just knew how you tick, but you haven't seen them for 5 years and not be, you have the power to pick up the phone and reconnect. And if there's someone, in that circle that sucks the soul dry and is the take, you have the power to choose not to spend time.
That is beautiful. And I just want to connect that with our beginning of this conversation. And it's how when all these alarms are coming, we have the opportunity to stop and to really even build this intimate circle where we are going to put the people that we already know that even if it's not our friends are willing to support and help. That have been absolutely beautiful, absolutely inspirational. Joanna, thank you very much, because I'm so grateful that always my guests are giving us even some work to do, because now with the things that you said, I think it's a lot of people thinking and make us realize, make this realization. And I don't know if you want to add something else to this nice episode.
I think if there's one takeaway that I would like the listeners to have, it's that you don't need to wait until XYZ happens to be happy. You have the power to be happy and at peace right now. When you quiet the noise and you let all the shoulda, woulda, couldas go, what is your gut and your intuition telling you that your first next step is? That could be as simple as going downstairs, making a cup of coffee and going and sitting on the terrace for 5 minutes just to breathe. It doesn't matter how big or how small it is, just what's that first next step, because you have it within you to create the life you want. And my invitation to you is to go and write that next chapter, because what life full of light and colour and happiness are you going to write for yourself right now, today?
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. Thank you very much for being here and for sharing with us all your journey. Thank you very much, Jo.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
We hope you have been inspired by this content and join us for future episodes of the Brilliantly Branded podcast. We will continue exploring the power of branding and the stories behind successful brands. And remember, if you know a woman who has built a successful brand with a unique approach and a story to share, please refer them to our podcast. We would love to learn from their experiences and share their story with our listeners. Stay tuned for most episodes of Brilliantly Branded, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, on our YouTube channel for more branding insights and women empowerment. Until the next episode, ciao ciao.